This veteran and his injured canine were forgotten until a little girl changed everything. High up in the northern hills of Oregon, where fog never quite lifted and the pine trees stood like sentinels in the mist, there was a narrow dirt path that wound through the woods to a forgotten cabin. No road signs pointed the way. No GPS could find it. The only way to reach it was to know it was there, or be lost. That's where Benjamin Cole lived. He was a man the world had let go of long ago. No family visited, no mail came. He had no social media, no cell phone, no real footprint in the town below. And that was exactly how he wanted it. His only companion was Valor, an aging German shepherd with a silver muzzle, a limp in his back leg, and one ear that no longer twitched at sound. They were both broken, in ways most people couldn't see and wouldn't bother to ask about, but they knew each other's pain like old scars. Benjamin had once been a Marine sergeant. He didn't like to talk about it. Not that there was anyone left to listen. He and Valor had served together overseas, in some of the worst parts of the world. Fallujah, Kandahar, names that clung to the soul like soot. One day, a roadside bomb changed everything. The blast tore through their convoy. Benjamin's left leg was torn up. Valor took shrapnel to the shoulder and lost hearing in one ear. 3 other men didn't make it out of that Humvee. After weeks in military hospitals, Benjamin got his discharge papers. So did Valor. The brass had wanted to reassign the dog, retrain him. Benjamin said only one thing. If he doesn't come home with me, I don't come home at all. No one argued. The VA gave him a small pension. He took what little he had and disappeared into the woods, back to his late father's hunting cabin. Long abandoned, nestled high above the noise of the world. He fixed the roof, patched the walls, rigged a water tank and a propane stove. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep the rain out and the wind from cutting through. Each morning, he brewed coffee in a dented tin percolator. Val would stretch by the hearth, his body stiff from old injuries, just like Benjamin's. They walked the ridge trail together, Benjamin with a hand-carved cane, Valor 3 steps ahead, still alert even after all these years. He never put a leash on him, never needed to. Some bonds don't require ropes. Neighbors, if you could call them that, called him the ghost on the hill. No one had seen him up close in years. Kids in town told stories. That he was a sniper, that his dog had killed a bear, that he talked to no one and shot at squirrels for fun. But they didn't know anything. Not really. The truth was simpler and sadder. Benjamin had once had a daughter. Her name was Lily. She was 9 years old when she died in a car crash. Benjamin was stationed overseas at the time. His wife had sent a photo the week before, the two of them smiling in front of their Christmas tree, bundled in scarves and wool hats. 3 weeks later, they were both gone. He missed the funeral, missed the last phone call, missed everything that might have mattered. After that, he never really came back. Not to anyone. Only Valor stayed. At night, the old dog would dream, legs twitching, soft whimpers escaping his throat. Benjamin never woke him. He understood. He dreamed too. Sometimes they sat in silence by the fire for hours. Benjamin would sketch in a tattered notebook. Faces from memory, rough outlines of men long gone. He never got the eyes quite right. The dead have a way of fading in the mind, even when you don't want them to. He didn't mark holidays, didn't remember birthdays. The calendar by the window still showed June 2015, the year he stopped caring. He hadn't spoken to anyone outside of town services in years. Once a month, someone from the VA would come by to drop off meds. He never invited them in. They'd hand over the brown bag, say, "Semper Fi," and leave. No one stayed. No one, except for Valor. There were mornings in winter, when the pipes froze and his joints ached so bad he couldn't grip the coffee cup. Valor would nudge it toward him with his nose. Other days, Benjamin would sit on the porch and listen to the wind whistling through the trees and think, if today was the day he died, maybe no one would even know. He didn't fear death. He feared dying alone and being found by no one except the dog, who wouldn't understand why he stopped breathing. Then, one day in early spring, it changed. It was just after sunrise. The fog hadn't burned off yet. Benjamin was finishing his walk with Valor when the dog stopped. Not just paws froze, ears perked, nose in the wind. And then, to Benjamin's surprise, Valor veered off the trail and disappeared into the trees. Benjamin followed, heart racing, old instincts kicking in. He hadn't seen Valor break formation like that in years. And there, in the quiet woods, just beyond the pines, stood a girl. She couldn't have been more than 10, maybe 11. Freckled cheeks, wind-blown hair, two thin arms wrapped in a faded denim jacket. She didn't speak. She didn't run. She just watched. And Valor, the same dog who hadn't trusted a single soul in 15 years, walked right up to her, sat down on her feet, and looked back at Benjamin like he'd brought her there on purpose. Benjamin stared. The girl stared back. He cleared his throat. "You lost, kid?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she said, voice flat. "I came here to not be found." The girl didn't say much after that first sentence. She just stood there, one hand loosely holding the strap of a tattered backpack, the other resting on Valor's thick fur like she'd known him her whole life. Benjamin wasn't sure what to make of it. He wasn't good with children anymore, maybe never had been. The war had trained him to read danger movement, to rein not to face his 11-year-old girls with guarded eyes and 2 adult silences. Still, he'd seen enough field trauma to recognize something raw when it stared back at him. He tilted his head. "Where are your folks?" The girl shrugged. "You live down in town?" A pause, then a quiet, sort of. She didn't offer more. Benjamin didn't press. He wasn't in the business of dragging confessions from people. He knew what it meant to carry something you didn't want to name. Valor circled once and sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. His tail thumped once against the mossy ground, then went still. Benjamin narrowed his eyes. The dog hadn't done that with anyone, not in years. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl looked up, her eyes light gray, almost silvery in the fog. "Lily." Benjamin felt something catch in his chest. The kind of catch that came before a bad dream or a memory you'd locked in the attic too long. He swallowed hard and looked away. "Well," he said after a long silence, "I'm Ben. That's Valor." The girl nodded, like she already knew. The next morning, she came again. Benjamin spotted her from the edge of the porch. She didn't come up the trail, just hovered near the tree lean, like a wisp of smoke. Valor saw her first and trotted down the slope to greet her, slower now with age, but with a purpose that startled Benjamin. This time, she had a book in hand, something with a frayed spine and a library sticker half peeled. She sat cross-legged in the clearing, opened the book, and began reading aloud to Valor as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Her voice was soft, unsure at first, but Valor settled at her feet, listening, blinking slowly. Benjamin stood at a distance, arms crossed, watching. He didn't say a word. By Friday, she was close to the cabin. Still didn't ask to come inside. Still didn't talk much to Benjamin. But she and Valor had become a quiet pair, reading, walking, sitting in long stretches of silence only animals and soldiers seemed to understand. Benjamin left a cup of cocoa on the porch rail one morning. She didn't drink it. But the next day, when he left it again, it was gone before noon. He found the empty mug cleaned and set carefully on the porch railing the next morning. "Your folks know you're out here?" he asked her once. Lily shrugged. "I leave a note. They don't usually check." Benjamin didn't ask what that meant. There was a stillness about her, something that reminded him too much of the soldiers who made it back but never really came back. She didn't flinch at sharp sounds. But when the wind knocked the shovel off its hook behind the cabin, her whole body tensed in the way a field medic might react to a mortar whistle. Valor noticed, too. He moved closer to her without being called. He always seemed to know. That's when it clicked. Valor had been uneasy lately. Not aggressive, just reactive, especially during walks near the base of the hill, near the road that led toward town. Every time they passed a certain bend in the trail, he would pause, sniff the air, then move closer to Benjamin, protective, alert, and now here he was, calm and open around a stranger. Not just any stranger, but a child, a girl with the same name as Benjamin's lost daughter. Too many coincidences. One night, after she'd left, Benjamin sat beside Val at the fire and ran a hand down the dog's back. "You smelled something, didn't you?" Valor didn't move, but Benjamin felt a low vibration of a whine in the dog's chest. Not distress. Recognition. The scent. Benjamin had read enough on animal memory to know that dogs remember scent far longer than we do faces. They catalog emotion, fear, blood, grief. Trauma leaves an imprint. What if Valor remembered the scent of the accident that took his wife and daughter? What if Lily carried something similar? Something from a trauma Valor couldn't ignore. It explained why he kept sitting beside her, why he guarded her, but gently. Why? When she touched him, he didn't tense. He leaned in. It wasn't just a child and a dog. It was two survivors recognizing something broken in each other. "You read to him," Benjamin said one morning, surprising her. Lily looked up. He liked stories. Benjamin sat slowly on the porch step, knees cracking like dry twigs. He never used to sit for anyone else, not even the VA caseworker. You got away with him. She glanced at Valor. He listens, doesn't interrupt. Benjamin chuckled, a rare sound that surprised even himself. Lily tucked her knees up to her chest. "Do you miss it? The war?" He didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "I miss the ones who didn't come back." Lily stared at the ground, her fingers knotting around her sleeve. "I miss my brother," she said, almost a whisper. Benjamin waited. "He used to sit like that with our dog. After he died, the dog ran away. No one ever found him." She didn't say how the brother died. Benjamin didn't ask. She'd said enough. As the days passed, something began to shift. She started brushing Valor's fur. While he slept, she stopped sitting at the edge of the clearing and sat closer to the porch. One afternoon, she left a small paper origami crane on the steps. No note, just a bird. Benjamin kept it, not in his pocket, but near the window, beside the photo he rarely looked at anymore, the one of his wife and daughter beneath the Christmas tree, wrapped in wool and light. The old pain hadn't gone anywhere, but now it had company. One morning, Benjamin rose early and Valor wasn't at the foot of the bed. He found him at the tree lean, pacing, tense, and Lily wasn't there. She never missed a day. That's when Benjamin noticed a path of paw prints and something smaller, sneaker tread, leading away from the trail, deeper into the woods. Valor barked once. Short, urgent. Benjamin grabbed his coat and followed. What they found in the old hunting blind made his stomach turn cold. Lily, curled in a sleeping bag, eyes open, lips split. She didn't speak, just looked at him. "I'm fine," she mumbled. "No," Benjamin said, kneeling with effort beside her. "You're not." He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He just said, "Come on, you're coming with us." And for the first time, Lily didn't argue. She took Valor's offered head like a hand and followed him home. It was the first time in over 2 weeks that Lily hadn't shown up. Benjamin noticed at the moment he stepped out onto the porch. The air had a damp, heavy quality to it, like the woods were holding their breath. Valor stood at the edge of the clearing, head tilted toward the trail, ears, what remained of them, perked with an unease Benjamin hadn't seen since their deployment days. He waited until noon, then 1, then 3. Still nothing. At dusk, Benjamin packed a canteen, tucked a thermal blanket under his arm, and slipped a protein bar into his jacket pocket. He didn't say a word, but Valor was already at his side, tail stiff, legs tense. They didn't follow the usual path. Instead, Valor led, nose low to the ground, moving with that same slow, deliberate focus he used when tracking scent under gunfire. It had been years, but instinct didn't rust. It only grew quiet, waiting. They found her in the hunting blind, an old, rusted-over box of a structure once used by weekend sportsmen, now collapsing in on itself. The inside smelled of wet pine, dirt, and something else, faint metallic like dried blood or old panic. Lily was curled in a sleeping bag, tucked deep in a corner where the light didn't quite reach. She didn't move when Benjamin called her name. But Valor did. The dog trotted forward, slow and low, crouching down beside her. He pressed his muzzle to her arm, then lay beside her without a sound. His breathing matched hers, shallow, controlled, fragile. Benjamin stepped inside, heart tight. Her lip was split. There was a faint bruise blooming along her cheekbone, too neat to be from a fall. Her wrists were scraped, and a button was missing from her jacket. But what chilled him more was a look in her eyes. Not fear, not pain, just detachment, like she'd left the room and forgotten to take her body with her. "I told you I'd be back," she whispered, "but I had to go home." Benjamin crouched beside her, ignoring the groan in his knees. "Did someone hurt you?" he asked, voice steady. She shook her head, then nodded, then said nothing at all. He didn't press. He didn't call the sheriff. He didn't drive her into town to make a statement or report. Instead, he wrapped her in the thermal blanket, helped her stand, and let her lean on his shoulder as they walked the slow path home. Back at the cabin, he didn't say a word as she sat on the sofa. He lit the fire, placed a mug of tea on the table, and laid Valor's favorite wool blanket across her lap. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't a fix. But it was presence. And for kids like Lily, Benjamin knew presence meant survival. That night, she didn't sleep. Benjamin could hear her tossing in the living room, Valor's claws clicking gently on the floor as he shifted closer, 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 until the thud of her heartbeat softened, and finally, the cabin exhaled. At dawn, she was already awake, sitting at the table with a blank notepad in front of her. Her pencil moved slowly, sketching loops and lines, half drawings of trees, a dog's head, a girl with no mouth. Benjamin poured her tea and sat across from her, saying nothing. She looked up. "He didn't mean to," she said softly. Benjamin stirred his coffee. "He only gets like that when he drinks. And Mom, she says things are complicated." He nodded slowly. "You know what's not complicated?" he said. Lily shook her head. "The way Valor never forgets where the food bowl is, or how he sleeps closest to the window during storms, or how he still checks every corner of the room like it matters." Lily blinked. "Sometimes," he continued, "what feels complicated is just what people refuse to fix." Later that morning, Benjamin made a call. Not to law enforcement, not to a lawyer, but to Carla. She was a caseworker from the VA, one of the few who still checked in on him every few months. She'd known Benjamin long enough to stop asking him how he was doing. She knew better. When he called, she picked up on the first ring. "Ben." Her voice had that warm rasp of someone who never gave up on hard cases. "Everything all right?" "I've got a situation," he said. "A girl needs help, can't go back home." A pause. "Is she with you?" "She is now. I'll be there in 3 hours." Carla arrived in her government-issued sedan, carrying a clipboard, a soft voice, and a steely focus that had once scared off colonels. She wore a windbreaker and hiking boots and moved like someone who knew the terrain, both physical and emotional. Lily didn't speak much when she arrived, just looked at Valor, then at Benjamin. Carla crouched beside her, far enough not to crowd. "You like dogs?" she asked. Lily nodded. Carla smiled. "Good. Dogs are smart. They don't waste time with people who aren't worth it." That earned a flicker of something on Lily's face, the start of a smile, maybe, or maybe just surprise at being spoken to without pity. Carla stayed until sunset. She didn't take Lily away, didn't force her into a car or insist on paperwork. She asked questions, yes, but gently. She took notes. She promised nothing except to return the next day. That night, Lily slept soundly for the first time in days. So did Benjamin. So did Valor. In the days that followed, things shifted quietly. Lily didn't leave the cabin. Benjamin didn't ask her to. She helped with chores, feeding the birds, folding kindling, sweeping the porch. She brushed Valor's fur until it shone and taught him a new trick, using hand signals Benjamin hadn't even shown her. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. She shrugged. "Just made it up." He smiled. "You got a mind for communication." She looked up at him, cautious. "You mean like therapy?" He shook his head. "I mean like survival." Carla came back with papers. Not legal custody. Not yet, just enough to keep Lily there while the process was underway. She would file for emergency placement. She'd document the bruises, the emotional withdrawal, the confirmed reports from school that Lily had been shutting down for months. But more than that, she listened. She watched how Lily's voice rose slightly when talking to Valor, how she moved easier when Benjamin was in the room, how the sound of the wind didn't make her flinch the way it had in the woods. "She's safer here," Carla said one afternoon. "But more than that, she's healing here." Benjamin didn't respond right away. He was staring out the window, watching Lily walk the trail with Valor at her side. "She reminds me of someone," he said finally. "Your daughter?" Carla asked gently. He nodded. Same eyes, same quiet way of watching the world. Carla placed a hand on his shoulder. Maybe this time, the world's watching back. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Benjamin stood at the porch with Valor beside him. The stars blinked into view above the tree line, cold and quiet. He exhaled, the breath rising like smoke. "She doesn't have a place to go," he murmured to the dog. "But maybe we're meant to be that place." Valor's ears twitched, and for the first time in years, Benjamin didn't feel like a ghost on a hill. He felt like a home. The cabin began to change, slowly and almost imperceptibly at first. It wasn't anything grand or dramatic. There were no renovations, no fresh coats of paint, no shiny new appliances. But if you lived inside its walls long enough, you would have noticed a difference. There were 2 mugs on the table now, instead of 1. A second blanket, draped across the back of the rocking chair. A paperback left open on the porch railing, fluttering in the breeze. The faint scent of lavender tea in the kitchen. Sometimes cinnamon if Lily had stirred the oatmeal. And Valor, he was different too. He had always been loyal, steady, dependable. A soldier's dog through and through. But now there was a softness to him. He trotted after Lily with a lightness in his step that had nothing to do with age or healing. He watched her not like a guard, but like an older brother who'd taken on the role of protector because no one else had. And Lily? She smiled more now. Not the kind of smile that stretched wide or made a sound. Hers were quiet things, small corners of the mouth turned up, laughter that stopped before it got loud. But it was there. She read aloud less and talked more, mostly to Valor, but sometimes to Benjamin, too. She asked questions about tools, about knots, about how to spot deer tracks or make a bird feeder. And when Benjamin answered, she didn't just listen, she memorized. "You've got a soldier's brain," he told her one day as she demonstrated a perfect hand signal he hadn't taught her. She tilted her head. "What's that mean?" He considered. "Means you remember what matters. You notice the little things. And you use silence like a language." She nodded. "That's how dogs talk." He smiled. "And some people, too." Lily had started helping with the morning chores. She'd rise with the sun, hair wild from sleep, and slip on the wool sweater Benjamin had found folded in a chest his daughter's, long outgrown but still soft and warm. She fed the birds, gathered kindling, even tried her hand at chopping firewood, though Benjamin insisted she start with stacking it first. She didn't complain. She worked in silence, moving with a patience that felt far older than her years. Sometimes he caught her and Valor sitting on the ridge trail just after dawn, watching the valley below. The town they no longer had to escape, just observe from a safe distance. She never asked when she'd have to leave, and Benjamin never brought it up. Carla came every few days now, checking in, handling the paperwork, and speaking in that calm, steady tone that never forced anything, never rushed. She made calls, filled out forms, advocated with a kind of quiet fierceness that could move mountains without shouting. One afternoon, she arrived holding a manila envelope and a hopeful smile. "We've been granted temporary guardianship," she told Benjamin. "It's not permanent yet, but it's a start." Benjamin nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the girl crouched near the woodpile, showing Valor how to nose a fallen pine cone like it was treasure. "She wants to stay," he said. Carla's voice softened. "And she's safe here. That matters more than anything." At the edge of town, people began to talk. A few had noticed the girl missing from school. A teacher filed a report. A neighbor remembered a bruise. But Carla had handled it, delicately, thoroughly, with care. Lily would start classes again soon on a modified schedule, one step at a time. But for now, the cabin was her classroom, the forest her textbook. And Benjamin? He was learning too, though he'd never admit it aloud. He was learning what it meant to wake up for someone else again, what it meant to listen instead of prepare a response, to share silence not as a shield, but as an offering. One evening, as a cold rain began tapping against the cabin's tin roof, Lily sat at the table scribbling something into a notebook. Benjamin looked over. "What are you working on?" "A list," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Of all the things I want to learn before winter." She pushed the notebook toward him. The list was short but precise. How to tie a bowline, how to gut a fish, how to whistle with my fingers, how to know when a dog's afraid, how to split kindling without hitting my foot, how to shoot a rifle, maybe, how to sleep without dreaming bad things. Benjamin read the last line twice, then handed the notebook back. "I can teach you most of those," he said. Lily smiled faintly. "Even the dreaming part?" "No promises," he murmured. "But maybe Valor can help with that one." That night, the power flickered and went out. Not unusual on the hill. The cabin lit up in the orange glow of the fire, and Benjamin lit an oil lamp he hadn't touched in years. Lily curled up on the couch, Valor at her feet, the storm whispering against the windows. Benjamin sat across from her, nursing a chipped mug of tea. She looked up. "Did you ever think you'd be taking care of someone again?" He considered the question, the fire casting shadows across his face. "No," he said honestly. "Why'd you say yes?" He looked at her, really looked, saw the small scar near her eyebrow, the bitten nails, the threadbare sleeve she kept tugging when nervous. "You didn't give me a choice," he said gently. She smiled. A week later, they took a trip into town, just for supplies, just an hour. Benjamin wanted to test how she'd handle it. The noise, the people, the questions. She didn't want to go at first. But when he said Valor would ride in the front seat beside her, she agreed. They parked near the hardware store. Benjamin went in. Lily waited on the bench out front, Valor by her side, his body pressed lightly against her legs like an anchor. A woman walking a corgi passed them. The small dog yapped loudly. Lily flinched. Valor stood. Not barking, not growling, just placing himself between Lily and the noise, body calm but immovable. Benjamin returned just in time to see it. The woman apologized, tugging her dog away. Lily looked at Benjamin, eyes wide. He didn't even need a command. She whispered. "Nope," he said. He knew. She knelt and hugged Valor. Not just a pat or a touch, but a full-bodied press of her arms into his fur, her cheek resting against his back. "He's my home now," she said quietly. Benjamin's chest tightened. He looked away before she could see his eyes misting. "Yeah," he said. "Mine too." That night, they carved a wooden sign to hang by the cabin door. Just 3 words. "We're still here." Lily painted them herself, slowly and with care, using old brushes Benjamin had forgotten he kept. It wasn't art. It was a declaration. A stake in the earth from 2 souls who had every reason to give up and every reason not to, because they'd found something most people spend a lifetime searching for. Not perfection, not healing, but a place to stay, and someone who stays. It was the first frost of the season. The woods around the cabin had taken on that crisp, breath-held stillness that comes before winter truly arrives. The maple leaves had fallen overnight, blanketing the trail in a soft, golden hush. Smoke curled from the chimney like a slow exhale. Inside the cabin, the air was warm but still, too still. Lily was the one who noticed it first. She'd woken before the sun, as she often did now, wrapped herself in her borrowed wool sweater, and shuffled out of the loft with Valor close behind her. She expected the familiar. The scrape of Benjamin's chair, the scent of brewing coffee, the grumble of the weather report from his old battery-powered radio. But none of it came. Instead, the cabin was silent in a way she didn't like. A kind of silence that pressed in from the corners, not peaceful but absent. She moved toward the back room. Valor didn't follow. He stood in the threshold, body tense, head lowered. His nose twitched once, then again, then stilled. Lily's hand hovered on the doorframe. She found Benjamin lying on his side, one hand resting lightly on the edge of the blanket, the other on Valor's old leash, which he kept near his pillow like a habit. His expression was gentle, calm, as though he'd fallen asleep, remembering something he wanted to hold on to, or someone. Lily didn't scream. She sat on the floor beside the bed, pulled her knees to her chest, and laid her head against the mattress. Valor came in a few minutes later, sat down beside her, and placed his chin on her knee. And that's how Carla found them an hour later. The girl, the dog, and the man who had finally let go. The funeral was small. By then, the ground had hardened with winter's first grip. The ceremony took place at a modest cemetery just outside town. Carla made the arrangements. A few of Benjamin's old unit members came, 2 men with weathered faces and silver pins in their lapels. One saluted the coffin before wiping his eyes behind dark glasses. There was no preacher, no formal eulogy, just the wind, the trees, and the quiet shuffle of boots on frosted grass. Lily wore Benjamin's coat, the same one he'd worn every day on the ridge trail. It dwarfed her small frame, the sleeves falling over her hands, the hem brushing her boots. But she wore like armor, shoulders back, eyes steady. She didn't cry. Not then. When the moment came for words, Carla turned gently to her. "Would you like to say something?" Lily stepped forward. She stood beside the wooden box, where Benjamin now rested in the same stillness he'd lived with for so long. Valor sat behind her, close but not touching, letting her lead. Lily cleared her throat. Her voice came small but firm. "He never tried to fix me," she said. "He didn't tell me I had to be okay. He just made room." She paused. The wind picked up, tugging at her hair, the oversized coat rippling around her like a flag. "And because of that, I learned how to stay." There was a beat of silence. Then she nodded once, turned around, and walked back to Valor. He rose to meet her, and together they watched as the casket was lowered into the frozen earth. The days that followed were hollow. Grief settled into the corners of the cabin like wood smoke that wouldn't clear. Lily moved through her routines, chopping kindling, boiling water, feeding the birds, but it all felt slower now, like walking underwater. She didn't speak much. Carla checked in daily. She brought hot meals, helped sort through Benjamin's belongings, made sure Valor had what he needed, but she didn't hover. She understood that grief wasn't something you could clean up with casseroles and condolences. It had to live its way through. One afternoon, Lily found herself in Benjamin's room, standing beside his nightstand. She picked up the old leather-bound notebook he always carried but rarely shared. She opened to the first page. Inside, written in the rough scrawl of a soldier-turned-hermit, were sketches of faces, his fallen comrades, perhaps. And among them, one small drawing of a girl, curled on a porch step, reading to a dog. No name, just a date. 2 weeks after Lily first arrived. She turned the page. A note, in handwriting shaky but determined. "I didn't think I'd live long enough to matter again. But I did, because of her." Her eyes stung, but no tears came. Not yet. That evening, Lily cooked dinner for the first time. Not just heating a can or boiling water, but real cooking, pasta, sauce from scratch, toasted bread in the skillet the way Benjamin had taught her. She set 2 plates on the table, one for herself, one untouched across from her. Valor lay at her feet. They ate in silence. Halfway through the meal, she looked across the table and whispered, "You still matter." The next morning, she didn't wake with the ache in her chest. It was still there, of course, but different now, not sharp and sudden, just quieter, like a song she couldn't hear all the words to, but recognized all the same. Carla came by later that week with a proposal. "His file's been closed," she said gently, "but that doesn't mean the work has to end." Lily looked up. "There's a grant," Carla continued, pulling a folder from her bag, "for therapeutic spaces for veterans and working dogs. We could turn the cabin into something more, something that keeps what he built alive." Lily said nothing at first. She stepped outside instead, Valor following close behind. She walked to the edge of the ridge trail where she and Benjamin had stood so many mornings. The valley stretched out before her, painted in late autumn grays and golds. Somewhere below, life continued. People grocery shopping, kids going to school, dogs barking in yards. But up here it was quiet, safe, home. She reached down and scratched Valor's ear. "We could help more people like him," she murmured. "Like us." Valor leaned into her. When she went back inside, she nodded once to Carla. "Let's call it Camp Valor," she said. The paperwork took time. The renovations took more. But soon, the cabin became something more than just a shelter in the woods. It became a center, a place where veterans could come and reconnect, not just with dogs, but with themselves, where kids like Lily, carrying invisible wounds, could meet eyes that didn't ask them to explain. Valor became the face of the program. His picture was framed on the website. His steady presence reassured the broken, guided the lost. And Lily? She led quietly, taught hand signals, listened more than she spoke, sat beside people who couldn't stop shaking, who hadn't slept, who hadn't spoken in months. Sometimes she didn't need words at all. Sometimes she just said what Benjamin had once said to her. "You don't have to be okay here. You just have to stay." The sign was carved by hand, each letter etched with the care of someone who understood what permanence meant. It hung above the gate, leading into the clearing where the cabin once stood alone. Camp Valor, where loyalty lives on. It was a simple phrase. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. But for the ones who arrive at the camp with hollow eyes, slumped shoulders, and hands that trembled even when still, it meant everything. It meant someone had thought of them. It meant they weren't too late. The idea had started small, like most real things do. A conversation between Lily and Carla by the fire one winter night. Valor had been curled up at their feet, his breath steady, paws twitching in sleep. Outside, snow fell in soft, sideways silence, frosting the windows in lace-like patterns. "He'd want this," Lily had said. Carla nodded. "He already started it. We're just carrying it forward." At first, it was just them. Carla filed the paperwork. Lily drafted the letters. Local veterans groups donated supplies. The town, slow to trust but quick to honor once they understood, pitched in what they could: cots, lumber, heating equipment, food. Even the hardware store down in the valley painted a plaque with Benjamin's name on it, which now sat beside the flagpole out front. A quiet tribute for a man who never asked to be remembered. The first guests were hesitant. They came up the trail like ghosts, much like Benjamin once had. Men and women whose uniforms no longer fit, whose homes no longer felt like home. People who'd spent years with their backs to walls and their emotions packed in too tight. And dogs, so many dogs. Some retired K9s, some in training. Others strays, too smart and too skittish to belong anywhere else. Camp Valor took them all, because it understood something few programs did. Sometimes the wounded find healing in the company of the wounded. Each cabin built after the original mirrored its spirit. Rough wood, wide porches, fire pits out back. No televisions. No clocks ticking too loud. Just quiet spaces, safe routines, and the steady presence of someone who knew how to listen. And always dogs. Dogs who didn't flinch when hands shook. Dogs who didn't ask questions when nightmares woke their handlers at 3 a.m. Dogs who laid their heads on knees without waiting for permission. Lily trained them all, not by command, but by trust. Her methods were quiet. A tap of fingers, a shift in stance, a barely audible whistle. She taught others, too, the veterans who came for a week and stayed a month, the kids who came from broken homes, like she once had, and left with a dog and a purpose. She never raised her voice. She didn't have to. Valor was older now, his muzzle fully silver, his steps slower, his hearing not what it once was. But he still patrolled the camp like a sentinel, still greeted every new arrival with a calm stare and a wag of his tail that said, "You're safe here. I'll make sure of it." One day, a man named Jack arrived. He was a former medic, early 40s, divorced, with a distant look in his eyes and burned scars climbing the side of his neck like vines. He barely spoke the first week. Ate alone. sat by the woodshed for hours, carving patterns into pieces of pine. On the 8th day, Lily brought Valor over. Jack flinched at first, then froze. Valor sat, waited. Jack looked down. Then, without a word, he dropped the knife, leaned forward, and wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. He sobbed into his fur for 10 straight minutes. Afterward, he asked if he could stay longer. Another time, a boy named Devin came with a youth counselor, 10 years old, removed from a foster home after being found hiding in a crawl space with bruises and a flashlight. He wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat. Lily gave him a pup named Radar, one of Valor's great-grandpups, full of energy and 2 large ears. Devin didn't say a word for days. But on the 5th night, he was found curled up in Radar's dog bed, the pup asleep on his chest, and a crumpled note tucked under his arm. It read, "He doesn't make me feel like I'm in trouble when I breathe." Lily framed it. It hangs in the main lodge today. Every year on November 11th, the camp holds a small ceremony. No parades, no speeches, just names. Benjamin's is always read first. Then the names of those who didn't make it home, and the ones who did, but were never quite the same. Candles are lit. Silence is shared. And at the end, Lily stands beside the flagpole with Valor, still strong, still dignified. She says the same words each year. They didn't ask for a monument. They just needed someone to wait for them to come back. One afternoon, Carla pulled Lily aside. "I got a call," she said, handing over a letter. It was from a university, a small behavioral science institute. They'd heard of Camp Valor, read about it in a regional article. They wanted to document Lily's methods, study the outcomes, possibly collaborate. Lily stared at the letter, then at Valor sleeping in the sun. "I didn't do this to be studied," she said quietly. Carla smiled. "I know. That's why they're interested." Later that night, Lily sat by the fire pit, Valor's head in her lap. She ran her fingers over the fur between his ears and whispered, "I didn't think it would grow this far." Valor blinked. She chuckled. "But you did, didn't you?" He didn't answer, of course, but his tail tapped the dirt once. Just once. And that was enough. Camp Valor never advertised. It didn't have a glossy website or social media team. But word spread anyway, through whispers in VA offices, through counselors, through veterans who found, for the first time in years, that sleep didn't mean terror, that a hand on their shoulder didn't feel like a threat. They told others, and the others came. Not everyone stayed forever. Some only came for a weekend, a week, a season. But each person left something behind, a lesson, a laugh, a carving on the porch rail, a story shared at the fire pit. Lily kept a journal of them all. She called it the Ledger of the Staid. And in the front, beneath Benjamin's name, she wrote, "He didn't live long enough to see what he built, but he lived just long enough to give me the tools to finish it." It was the first warm morning of spring. The frost had finally lifted from the windows. Small bursts of green pushed up between the cabin's stone steps, and the birds, chickadees, blue jays, even a robin or two, returned to their favorite branches, singing like they hadn't forgotten winter, but had forgiven it. Lily stood on the porch in the golden hush of dawn, lacing up her boots slowly. She wore Benjamin's old coat, sleeves now shortened, the seams mended with patches of canvas, each stitch a reminder that some things don't have to be replaced to be made whole again. At her feet sat Valor, now in the twilight of his years. His muzzle had gone completely white. His joints moved like stiff hinges. His eyes clouded a little, but he still rose the moment Lily did, still leaned into her like he always had, still waited for the signal, even if it took longer now to follow through. And in her other hand was a second leash. Attached to it was Scout, a young German shepherd from one of Valor's last litters. She was eager, spirited, ears too big for her face, with a stride that was always half ahead of herself. She mirrored Valor's posture in the same way a child mirrors their parent. Clumsy at times, but deeply sincere. Together, the three of them stepped off the porch and onto the trail that circled the ridge. The same trail Benjamin had walked every day of his last years. The same trail Lily had once watched from the edge of the trees, too afraid to step forward, too wounded to believe in permanence. The woods were quiet that morning, not silent but content. There was a rhythm in the wind through the pines, a kindness in the way the light pooled between branches. The trail was softer than usual, the dirt still damp with last week's rain. Scout darted forward and back, like a heartbeat, like youth that didn't know caution yet. Valor walked slow. Lily slowed with him. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. This wasn't a walk for conversation. It was a walk for remembering. Each bend of the trail carried memory. Here, where Benjamin had once taught her how to listen to the forest, to hear the difference between squirrel chatter and the heavier snap of a deer. There, the stump where she'd sat during her first snowfall and realized, with a start, that she wasn't afraid of the quiet anymore. And further still, the clearing where Benjamin had told her the truth about his daughter. Not in a long story, just a few words. Her name was Lily, too. She was 9. No anger, no tears, just a name, and the ache that never quite went away. An ache he'd carried until the day a stranger showed up in the woods with the same name and eyes too old for her face. They had both healed by staying. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough. At the halfway point, Lily paused by the overlook, a narrow shelf of stone that jutted out over the valley below. The town looked smaller than she remembered, maybe because she'd grown, or maybe because the world always seemed smaller once you knew your place in it. Scout sat beside her, panting, tail sweeping little arcs through the pine needles. Valor lay down slowly, his breath steady but shallow. Lily pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket, unfolded it. It was the original copy of Benjamin's discharge letter, the one he had once crumpled and stuffed in a drawer. On the back of it, in faded ink and slow handwriting, was a note she'd never seen until weeks after the funeral. It read, "If she ever finds this trail on her own, then I did something right." Lily blinked once. Then again. She didn't cry. She smiled. She folded the paper, kissed the top edge, and tucked it under a small cairn of stone she'd been building there each season. A ritual of sorts. A promise that the path was still being walked. Back at the cabin, a group was gathering. Veterans, therapists, caseworkers, teenagers in hoodies who'd never learned what safety felt like. And dogs, so many dogs. Scout would be introduced to them today as part of the new therapy team. Valor would watch from the sidelines, now officially retired but still revered. The legend, the elder. Lily would say a few words. Not a speech. Just enough. She always kept it simple. Later that afternoon, standing beneath the same tree where Benjamin once hung a wind chime from an old grenade pin, Lily took the mic. She looked around, faces both familiar and new. She saw Carla. She saw Devin, now taller than her, who trained dogs for other foster kids. She saw Jack, the former medic, who now ran their night shift and had stopped carving lines into wood because, as he put it, "My hands aren't shaking anymore." She saw people who had made it, and people who were just starting to try. And then she saw Scout, sitting still beside Valor, listening, waiting. Lily cleared her throat. "I used to think healing meant forgetting what happened," she said. "But it doesn't. It just means finding a way to carry it without it breaking you." She looked down at Valor. "And sometimes someone shows up who helps you carry it until you can stand again." She paused. The wind moved softly through the trees. "My father wasn't the one who raised me. My mother wasn't the one who saved me. But a man who had every reason to close the door still open anyway. He didn't try to fix me. He made room. A beat. And that's what Camp Valor is. It's not about fixing people. It's about giving them room. To fall. To stay. To grow." She looked at the children sitting on the grass. At the veterans leaning against pine beams, arms crossed, nodding. Everyone deserves a trail to walk, even if they start halfway through. That night, as the sun dipped low and the stars began to scatter across the sky, Lily sat on the porch with Valor's head in her lap and Scout curled against her hip. The camp behind her was glowing with firelight and laughter. Not loud, not chaotic, just steady, warm, alive. She looked down at the dogs, one gray, one new. "Thank you," she whispered. Both of you. Scout shifted slightly, pressing closer. Valor, eyes half closed, thumped his tail once. The same slow beat he'd always given when words weren't needed. And in that moment, Lily understood. She had once arrived here running from something. Now, others arrived because she had stayed. Final closing line. The path hadn't changed. Same dirt, same turns, same trees. But the girl walking it was no longer lost. She was home, and she had become the kind of person who left the door open behind her.